Bill Fogarty is a 30-year member of the UU Church of Arlington, having served in multiple roles in his congregation, from RE teacher to board chair to worship associate. He currently is working on the revival of a statewide UU social justice group known as VUUSAN, Virginia UU State Action Network, where the goal is to inform and connect UUs throughout the state on important issues. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. What's going on, right? I love that song, that version of the song. It really pepped me up. So nice to be with you all today. It is the second time I have been in this building. Pre-pandemic, my wife Elizabeth and I stopped by this building on a Saturday and on our way to visit some friends. We have a tradition of sorts to stop at UU congregations whenever we're traveling. Elizabeth is here with me today, and we are very happy to be able to attend a service with you. Thank you for inviting me. Let me share a little bit about my background. I grew up in the suburbs of northern New Jersey, the son of two New York City Irish Catholics. I went to Catholic schools all the way through college and even taught at the high school I attended. I came down to the DC area in 1982 to go to law school, renting an apartment in Arlington. It's hard to believe I've been in Arlington 42 years now. I was lucky enough to get a job with an Arlington law firm where I practiced for 35 years. And then I retired on March 1, 2020. That was 14 days before the pandemic officially hit. I was lucky to marry a born and raised Unitarian. We joined the Arlington Church in about 1993, where we have been very involved. I have been an RE teacher for fourth graders, worship associate, even a capital campaign chair. Yes, I have trouble saying no. So today, I want to recognize Reverend Kim Beach, who was our minister in Arlington when we started there. But to be honest, I was downstairs in the RE classrooms for about 10 years. I will say I recently read a number of his sermons. You see, as the unofficial church historian, I've stumbled upon the written sermons of all our ministers from 1960 to 2010. And I enjoy selecting some of those sermons based solely on the title. And speaking of titles, the title for my talk today is Rainbows and Religion, What's Going On? And I would like to begin with a prop I have brought. Here we go. This represents what some folks might think of as a participation trophy, right? I'm here to honor the concept of participation trophies. I say that because I gave out many such trophies, excuse me, when I was coaching girls soccer about 15 years. Why do I want to talk about participation trophies? I guess because one of my core beliefs is that whether on the soccer field or in the workplace or the community at large, we all can make a contribution to the team, whether it's the soccer team, the workplace, or again, our community at large. The value of civic participation is my general topic today. And let me start with the perspective provided by Wallace Stegner in his I Believe statement. Stegner writes he's suspicious of passionate faith. He fears immoderate zeal, whether it's Christian, Muslim, communist, or whatever. As an aside, I love the way he slipped in the phrase, or whatever. But I want to zero in on this excerpt. I believe that good depends not on things, but on the use we make of things. Everything potent, from human love to atomic energy, is dangerous. It produces ill about as readily as good. I would agree, everything potent is dangerous, including religion, or what Stegner might refer to as passionate faith. It is good to ask ourselves in our civic community life, how is religion being used, for good or for ill? From my childhood, I can remember religion's use for good. Every Christmas season, I would join my father and some of his fellow Catholic War veterans by collecting money in tin cans after church services with the incantation of help the veterans, for their fund drive to provide holiday gifts to the veterans at the local VA hospital. But it is important to recognize that religion is also used for ill. Sadly, religion is a significant source of discrimination and hate and violence. Here in the United States, we often refer to it as Christian nationalism. Some people prefer to use the phrase religious extremism, which lines up a bit with Stegner's reference to passionate faith. And I think it's a good idea to understand that even within one religious tradition, there are often multiple points of view. It is likely that we all know two people who might identify as Christian, but have opposite views on gay rights, for example. Which brings me to a few stories I would like to share. Here's a story about what's going on in Roanoke County. Last May, at a Roanoke County School Board meeting, during the public comment period, a parent goes to the podium and says he is there to talk about child abuse, grooming, and indoctrination by sexual predators disguised as teachers and staff. Yikes. He must have known some pretty scary stuff, eh? For his evidence, the parent pulled out 4 photos from an elementary school yearbook. There were 3 photos of teachers wearing rainbow-style clothing or jewelry. The 4th photo was a rainbow-colored sign with a 2-word phrase that apparently is some type of indoctrination. Everyone welcome. The referenced staff members in the small school were effectively outed. One of the teachers quit within months. And what did the Roanoke School Board do? Did they push back against these hateful accusations? No. 3 of the board members spoke up at a later meeting to affirm their Christian faith when they passed a policy that bans the posting of rainbows and bans rainbow clothing and bracelets. To quote an article on the Roanoke Times, in the mix are questions of church and state, with religion cited regularly during the long, heated public comment sections. During the public comments, speakers supporting the board often invoke Christian beliefs and hostility to LGBTQ concerns. They sometimes describe opposition to the board as demonically inspired. So I read that correctly. Those who want to wear rainbow clothing are apparently demonically inspired. Now, I must confess, I scratch my head and wonder about the hate engendered by a rainbow flag. But these are not isolated problems. At our church in Arlington during Pride Month, we plant hundreds of little rainbow flags around the outside of our campus. And even in the year 2023, we've had incidents of folks pulling them out and throwing them on the sidewalk or taking them away. This is baffling. Now I would like to share a second story closer to home here at the Samuels Library in Front Royal. It is a familiar story in Virginia and elsewhere these days, about books and book challenges that place enormous stress on our librarians. 53 people filed challenges to 134 books. The challenges were a result of a meeting organized by a Catholic church group. Their website was called Clean Up Samuels. The county board threatened to withhold funding and to take control of the library board. Sadly, the library director resigned. And in my research, I found written comments from the challenges. One was especially chilling. Quote, "Our library should not be carrying any material about LGBTQ," end quote. Such a comment expressing a desire to deny the existence and humanity of people saddens me and infuriates me. So what can we do in response to such problems, to what's going on, to what seems to bubble up from the use of religious beliefs? I would say we need to respond with vigorous civic participation. It's civic participation in Front Royal that came to the rescue. People pushed back. They participated publicly, letters to the editor, comments at the board meetings, and just showing up. And the library survived to live another day. And now another element in this civic participation is the need to gain and build allies. In Front Royal, as the controversy developed, a statement of support for the library was submitted publicly, signed by 42 Catholics, including 7 professors from Christendom College. That was a welcome example of civic participation and brave participation. So now I want to shift to my third story about the abuse of the phrase religious beliefs. especially as used by teachers throughout the country, seen in lawsuits here in Virginia, Loudoun County and King William County and elsewhere. It revolves around the concept of dead naming. Commonly, dead naming involves situations where a transgender student asks teachers to be called by a different name or a different pronoun than the one assigned at birth. There have been teachers who refuse to abide by this request, even when the parent clearly writes in support of this change. These teachers claim a right to refuse the request based on their religious beliefs. Now, when I reflect upon such a refusal to use a requested name, I'd like to avoid policy discussions and bring it down to a personal level. Think about it. The dead naming of students sends this message to the young child. In effect, the teacher is saying, I'm okay being unkind to you. To me, such action seems to violate the commandment of love your neighbor. So let's stay on this phrase, religious belief, and I'll bring out the old high school English teacher in me and say, we do not even need to use the adjective religious. Let's just use the word beliefs, which could include beliefs that are grounded on the teachings of a religion, but the courts and legislatures know that the simple word beliefs is the larger container to talk about. I looked at exemption clauses in the Virginia Code and found two good examples of legalized exemptions from the law. They both had the same phrase in the title, conscience clause. And the laws provide for exemptions based on, I'm quoting the code provision, personal or ethical or moral or religious grounds. That's a large container, isn't it? So you see, it all boils down to your conscience. It's funny that Wallace Stegner talks about conscience in the reading. It's your personal belief. Now, there are so many things I wanted to talk about in this talk. I could give you a legal discussion about religious exemptions and where that's headed. I'm tempted to talk about the need for the separation of church and state, but that's for another time and another venue. Today, I want to keep it personal, so to speak, to talk about our personal beliefs. So with that emphasis on beliefs, let's look at another Stegner quote. Remember his phrase, the good depends not on things, but on the use we make of things. So I'm taking that sentence, I'm taking the word things out and putting the word beliefs in. The good depends not on beliefs, but on the use we make of beliefs. Now, before we can ask and explore the question of how we make use of our beliefs, we need to reflect upon the foundational question, what are your beliefs? I would challenge you to perhaps take a crack at writing your own I believe statement. What would your statement look like? I have tried this exercise by starting with two questions suggested by a minister. What do I value? How then shall I live my life? For that first question, what do you value? We might want to think about our religious community. Does the UU faith help point the way to what we value? We have a lot of values embedded in the principles and in the recent UUA proposal to move to a set of values, the value of generosity, equity, compassion, centered around the value of love. So reflecting on the question of what do I value, it helps us by providing the framework of what do we value for what I think is the most important question, how then shall I live my life? I guess I'm basically saying that articulating a belief is good, but what really matters is our actions. Okay. And we might have a belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, but do our actions support that belief? We might say love is at the heart of all our values, but that feels like an empty phrase unless we put love into action. John Mayer is a singer-songwriter with many popular songs. One of my favorite songs has this title, Love is a Verb. I like that reminder, right? Love needs to be a verb. I watched a video recently of Reverend Ian Marr. He's the minister of the UU Church in Mount Vernon in Alexandria. And he had this to say. He said, words are not enough. We need to go beyond saying what we believe to showing what we believe. And I would suggest that showing what we believe necessarily includes civic participation in the public sphere. Now, 2 years ago, I strongly felt the need to participate, to take some action to support the LGBTQ community, or you might say, to act upon my beliefs. My moment of revelation came while attending a hearing in Richmond on a bill to get rid of the constitutional ban against same-sex marriage. There were 3 Christian groups lobbying to keep the ban on same-sex marriage, and they lobbied with some hurtful comments. And as the hearing ended, I asked myself, where was the faith voice for LGBTQ rights today? Our UU voice needs to be spoken aloud in public forums. And so I have been working with other UUs throughout the state with this Virginia UU State Action Network. And I can share some information for you after the service. There is something for everyone. We each might have our specific causes that might animate us. For you, it might be about banning assault weapons or raising the minimum wage or supporting a woman's right to control her body or pushing for easier access to solar power. Depending on what might energize you, I have one last question for you to ponder. What actions can we each take through civic participation in the public sphere that support our personal beliefs? Now, we do not have the time or the skills to do everything. But I hearken back to a phrase often used by the singer-songwriter Harry Chapin. It was the title of an excellent documentary about him. Do something. We each can do something. You know, I was looking at your website in the ESJ blog, and there's a post there with a title that kind of sums up my talk in just 3 words. It's a phrase that we often hear in the world of Unitarian Universalism. Deeds, not creeds. It is a good thought to always come back to. It is often a phrase we use pull out when we say, well, what's your religion? In response to the question, what's your religion? I sometimes reply with a 4-word phrase that I borrow from the Dalai Lama. My religion is kindness. In preparing for this talk today, I reflected upon that quote, my religion is kindness. And it struck me that, kindness is not an abstract concept. It really is about action. Right? I mean, when we talk about kindness, we talk about acts of kindness. So in closing, I come back to my praise for participation trophies as a way of highlighting an important value. The value, not of love, of compassion, of equity, but the value of participation. I appreciate your kindness and hospitality, allowing me to participate in your service and share some thoughts and questions with you. Thank you.